gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Political Smackdown. Pleased to have all of our regular crew with us this week. Andy Dedman, the gentleman from Earl. And Andy, I understand there's a sofa dropped on Sulphur Springs Church Road last week.
No, it's a mattress.
A mattress, oh.
All right, we have had a sofa before, so that's what you're thinking about.
Andy's at one end of the spectrum and Betsy's on my far right today. How about
Yes,
that,
I
Betsy?
am.
How's that going to work? Have you got any good far right things you can say
Oh, I
today?
bet I can find some.
And we're happy to have back with us former Senator Wes Westmoreland. Wes, glad you're back this week. Well, let's jump right in. One of the kind of big events for Shelby at least, and really for all of Cleveland County, that a lot of us have known was coming privately. This week at the City Council meeting in Shelby, City Manager Rick Howell announced his retirement to be effective December 31st, 2026 as manager of Shelby. Rick will have been manager for just over 20 years. He actually came, about about 3 years, I guess, after I had left the city of Shelby, and he's been there ever since. He came to Shelby from Brevard as city manager, which interestingly enough is where two managers go before him. Dee Freeman was manager. He came here from Brevard. And those of you that are local probably know that prior to that, Rick was the town manager in Bowling Springs. So Rick is completing his career in city management at the end of the year, and I'll talk about a few things, but Andy, we'll let you get started. You know Rick, and you've known him. Going to be a time for change in the city of Shelby at the lead.
Well, there he is. I mean, and let's face it, he's been here, as you said, a long time. He's put his stamp on a lot of stuff around, and he made sure sidewalks were about everywhere he wanted them, except in front of Pinnacle. And you can walk about anywhere you want to walk now, except that Pinnacle. So I'm sure Wes will have a thing or two to say about that. But, it's he's done his thing, and now he's going to ride off into the sunset. Whether he'll stay around or not, who knows? A lot of times city managers like that, they tend to go away from wherever. I don't even know where originally he come from. But maybe he's probably going to go back somewhere else, because they usually don't hang around long because they can't help but always want to say, well, I think I do it differently than this guy. Sometimes they can't help but, want to meddle with the new manager coming around. So probably the best thing to do is probably ride off to the beach or the mountains, or go back wherever he grew up or something like that. But anyway, I hope he has a good retirement wherever he ends up.
All right, well, Wes, you as well know Rick. What do you think about the fact that after over 20 years, he's going to retire? He's not an old gentleman, but he started in public service and public administration early, so he's got his time in.
Yeah, and Andy, it wasn't his lack of trying to get sidewalk in front of Pinnacle. First, I'd like to congratulate Mr. Howell. It's difficult to hold a job like that for 20 years in one position as manager. So obviously multiple counties, governments were obviously pleased with his service to Shelby, and so many improvements, particularly uptown, while the rail trail and other things certainly add to the quality of life for the city. One can't help wonder about the construction cost and the financing, and even though something like the rail trail is financed largely by grants, which of course are still tax dollars, I hope the budget is in place for the safety and the maintenance of the trail, especially it moves outside the city down to Earl. I guess my biggest concern is the lack of maintenance of the current infrastructure, and can't help but consider the folks on fixed income that will never participate in a lot of these visible improvements. To the credit of council and Mr. Howe's leadership is the repair of many of the underground utilities uptown, Mike, that were very old and needed replacement. But if the county commission can give raises and maintain the services at revenue neutral, it seems the municipalities should be able to do the same. And of course, Shelby raising the rates puts pressure on the county budget through the sales tax. But thank you again, Mr. Howell, for over 20 years of service to Shelby.
All right, Betsy?
Well, like you said, he spent over 20 years here in Shelby, and he was at Boiling Springs. He's been in the county quite a long time, and with his position, that's commendable. I never did have any dealings with him personally, except when I was heading up the campaign to build a new women's shelter, and I went to him several times, and we were looking for grants or something like that for the new shelter, and we were asking the Abuse Prevention Council was hoping to get some money out of the city budget, but we never did. So, but he was always very agreeable. Nothing ever came to fruition, though, from the talking to him. But I do wish him well. And Andy, he may go to Hawaii. I think Mr. John Watson from DSS went to Hawaii. Who knows? He may go to Ashe County. I don't know.
You never know.
Never know.
Well, I can make a few comments about Rick. I think if you want to give credit for the biggest single accomplishment that I think he gets a lot of credit for is economic development. The Foothills Commerce Center, all that land was brought into the city, subdivided, cooperative agreements with the county. That has been a huge success, and for the long-term tax base and jobs in Shelby and Cleveland County, I think that is probably going to stand out as a large accomplishment.
Which does beg the difference in being revenue neutral, because we've got all this extra.
Yeah, I'm gonna get to that.
Okay.
But another thing is the infrastructure improvements that Wes mentioned, especially in and around uptown Shelby. Those underground water and sewer lines that were done and the city streets were upheaved for a couple of years or more, they were needed when I was there, and we knew it. But we did not have the resources, and at the time there was no outside funding that we could find, and so we just patched and did the best we could in order to keep water rates as reasonable and sewer rates as reasonable as we could. But those are big improvements.
Please tell me they're going to pave the road sometime. Those are some of the roughest roads where they replaced that.
Well, you're talking about going out of town. Now,
No, I'm talking about uptown. I mean, they're right there on Washington Street, on parts of it they've paved. It's awful. And you go right there in front of the shops right along the rail to trail where they originally did the
Yeah, that's on Morgan Street, and that's just recently had sewer lines. I'm sure those will get paved, but I'm not in on the inside of that. Now, the first several years Mr. Howell was here, he inherited a 42-cent tax rate about 3 valuations ago from the board that was after me, which I left them with the 42-cent tax rate. It had been as high as 47, and we had reduced it. I still remember Skip Foster when he was here. When I retired as mayor, he said, say what you want about Mike Philbeck and the councils he's presided over, but they haven't raised taxes in 7 years. And that was true, and we still gave raises most of those years to employees from some growth. But Rick got this dadgum tax rate as high as 52.25 after the 2016. He struggled to get it to 43.5 before 2017, because before then he had a very conservative council. He has not had a particularly conservative council since. And with a couple of exceptions, he has pretty much gotten the budgets he has recommended, at least publicly, including this year when Shelby adopted a 45-cent tax rate after reval and did reduce it from 51.75. This was done on June 16th. But the revenue neutral rate that would have gotten them the growth that you get with that rate that we've talked about here It was 39.26 and is published in his budget message. So Shelby is about 5 3/4 cents above revenue neutral. So while I give them credit for cutting it some, it was not enough to offer fairness to those people on fixed incomes that have to pay it. I really only think of a couple things in the last 8 years that Rick's gotten his way on most things that he didn't get his way on from this city council. One was he wanted to close the golf course at the city park, and that became quite the stir, and the city council ultimately did not close the golf course. Now, to Rick's credit, it is a money loser. It always has been, and it's a quality of life issue, and it was given to the city for that purpose. And frankly, I think they probably did the right thing to keep it open, even though it cost a little bit of money every year. And the other thing that I thought of just right off the top of my head, Wes, is related to you and Pinnacle. You went and persuaded city council over staff objections to not have to put a sidewalk and a rail trail at Pinnacle, if I remember correctly.
And a greenway, right.
And a greenway. But for the most part, Rick's done a good job. He's great in economic development. I do wish he had left a lower tax rate, and I do know for a fact he could have. They were going to adopt whatever he recommended this year, and I'd be willing to bet that it could have been done. But Rick, overall, you did a good job in Shelby, and we thank you for your service here. Any other comments, or we'll move on?
I do think we need to, we've said before, but remind folks, particularly in Shelby and in Kings Mountain, they need to look at their tax bill and see where the bulk of the rates, the taxes have gone up. The commissioners are revenue neutral. That's an inflation-adjusted amount. Shelby, Kings Mountain are well above an inflation-adjusted amount. And I think we need to be careful and not take this out on county commissioners who have held their rates.
Well, that day is coming, and it's coming the last week of July and the first week of August. When people get their tax bills is when most people will realize just how much more their city taxes went up than their county taxes because of what Wes just commented on. Folks, we're a couple minutes early, but instead of starting something we can't finish, we're going to go to early break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the No Kings rallies held around the country, including in Cleveland County on Shelby Court Square, and we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Deb Harden, host of For Your Information. The goal of our show is to educate and entertain you about all things pets throughout Cleveland County. We have various guests joining me each month to talk about dogs, cats, pigs, whatever kind of pet you can think of. Also each month, we will be joined by some furry friends looking for their forever homes. For your information, each month, right here on C19 TV and online at www.c19.tv.
She gets her hair from her mom, her eyes from her dad, and her drugs from her home medicine cabinet. Fact: more people die from drug overdoses than from car crashes or gun violence. And over 50% of those deaths are from prescription drugs. Prescription drug abuse is preventable. 1. Secure and take regular inventory of our medications. 2. Dispose of unused or expired medications. 3. Share this message with others. Be aware, don't share, lock your meds.
Welcome back to the second half of Political Smackdown. So this past Saturday, before we were taping on Friday, there were No Kings rallies across the state and the country. Bringing particular attention to herself was one representative from Wake County, Julie Von Hafen, who posted a now deleted apparent photo of President Trump having been decapitated with a guillotine. That's the picture she posted on her Facebook page, which she did later delete. And that is Miller, I guess is that his chief of staff or something. He's something in front that is beside of him, and he's got a swastika on him. And that was at a rally in Raleigh.
And he's Jewish.
Yeah, he's Jewish, and they got a swastika on him. This created an immediate outrage. The North Carolina GOP immediately almost called for her to step down from the legislature because of this this very inconsiderate posting, and it happened on the heels of a state representative and her husband being shot and killed over political votes in the Minnesota legislature. And so, to her credit, we have to tell you that she did apologize. She did take it down. I thought the Speaker of the House, who is a Republican, of course, was gracious in acknowledging that she did it. Don't know if it's over yet or not. But I guess my bigger question with that, what's happened in Minnesota, y'all, what in the world is going on with our political discourse across the United States? Who is going to want to run for these offices if you can't express your opinions and not worry about whether or not you're literally endangering your life? Betsy?
I cannot believe that this representative did not think before she posted something like this. I mean, and we know, we talk to our students, to our children, about whatever you put up on public, on social media can follow you until the end of your life. And yes, she did. She took it down quickly, and yes, she apologized. But it was just very poor taste, and I'm just surprised that she did, with trying to get away from the violence and that's happened, like in Minnesota. And with the No Kings rallies across the country, there were over 2,200 of them, and 5 million people participated, and they were peaceful. The majority of them, I think they had one man drive into a crowd and killed one person somewhere in one of the other rallies. But they were peaceful. They were peaceful in LA. There was no need for troops to be there, for the military. And I just, you know, when it goes back to what you put up on your social media, you better watch what you put up, because even if you take it down, somebody can find it. So I figure that they probably, the Republicans down in the General Assembly will censor her. But as far as resigning, no, there have been other things that's been done that is not as, well, it's like this. And so I don't think she should resign. She's there because she was elected by the voters.
Well, Andy, we know if it would have been a Republican posting something like that, and it probably happened, about Obama and somebody on his staff, the Democratic Party would have been calling for their resignation. It's just what political parties do. But to her credit, she did apologize. But if even Betsy says it was very poor judgment, it was very poor judgment.
Well, Mike, you can't fix stupid. I mean, let's just put it right there. She should have known better.
Yes.
I mean, there's just no room for this kind of stuff. And this kind of climate we find ourselves in, something like this, you don't want to give some crazy person some kind of idea. I mean, you know, you hate to think about that, but you go out there and you have somebody who is an elected person that is a part of something like this, and they put something and they say, oh, well, that's okay. And that's like, well, I can go do that because this elected person said that. Well, how many times does somebody do something? Well, Trump did this or said this. Well, I'm going to go do that. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Well, and not to mention that Trump's had 2 assassination attempts in the last year.
I mean, that's it. You don't want to go out and give any of these crazies any kind of idea.
Talk about the broader issue quickly of how in the world is like what happened in Minnesota and all this kind of stuff. How is it going to impact people wanting to run? Our own Kelly Hastings, who said he wasn't going to run, says because of what went on in Minnesota and other things like Giuliani, he's going to run because he feels like he owes it to the people. Well, Kelly's an ex-Marine. Maybe that's the way he thinks. But I think the opposite. I think I'm less likely to run.
Well, but you're always going to have somebody that's going to run. I mean, there's always somebody out there that thinks they think they've got something. Either they've got something to offer or they hear the crowd call their name. They don't know it's just the voices in their head calling. But, you know, you got some people like that out there. I mean, but there always somebody seems like on some level, especially when you start getting from the state level on up, that always will step up and run.
Well, hopefully we'll get more good people to run. And less
You would
people,
hope.
Less people
Yes.
that will have as little discretion as this one representative here had, and certainly Hope nothing happens like happened in Minnesota. Yes. So Wes, from the No Kings rally to what happened in Minnesota, what are your thoughts on the political discourse in the state of it?
Well, let's start with Betsy's comments. I don't know how you can call Molotov cocktails, burning cars, and bricks thrown at law enforcement peaceful, as we've seen in LA and other places.
But not on last Saturday.
Yes, last Saturday during the No Kings.
Well, we must
But-
have watched different news programs.
Oh, I'm quite
promise you
sure we
that's true.
did. But the No Kings, at least in Shelby, appeared to be largely peaceful. And at least we still have no king, though I do think the movement was ill-timed. In Shelby, I only saw one photograph of a Palestinian flag uptown, but the anger was palatable, but people behaved, so I think it was legitimate here. They certainly have every right to protest. It's clear that many people, many Democrats, quite obviously want to change the very fabric of America and our founding with no regard to the Constitution. And no dislike of this president or any other justifies violence. But I reiterate, the Shelby No Kings appeared to be uneventful, and the community is all thankful for that. As far as why anybody would run, I have no idea. Why would you want to get into that? And I appreciate those who are willing to serve,
But you know, there was one I thought was interesting. There was one guy was from the Sons of the Confederacy that was there, and there was one protester for the No Kings, and she was having a conversation with him. They got along fine. She even gave him a bottle of cold water. Now, now that's about as polar opposites you got, and they could get along, and that's what discussion should be
and
about.
that's the way it ought to be.
That is.
Well, I think we all agree that peaceful protest is a part of American life, and violence should not be tolerated. All right. Earlier this year, there was a House Bill 765 that did not make Passover. It was very controversial, made broad changes to local zoning authority and limited what local governments could do. It died, but there was a swimming pool bill in the Senate Bill 205, that lo and behold has now had a lot of these same provisions added to it after there's been conversation between the Chamber, the Realtors, the Home Builders, the Association of County Commissioners, League of Municipalities about it. Several of the more stringent things have been taken out of it. And so while the business group supported, I know at Shelby City Council meeting, they've instructed the manager to prepare a resolution to oppose Senate Bill 205. Let me just give you a little flavor from the Chamber of Commerce, North Carolina Chamber, that says it will clarify that local development authority, this bill, is confined to those powers expressly given by the General Assembly. And they say that it will impose regulations to keep cities and counties from adding their own stuff not specifically authorized by the state statutes. And they think that's a good thing. They say many local governments have pressured builders to voluntarily agree to costly, unauthorized, and unlawful aesthetic features and other conditions by local regulation, and that would be stopped according to the Chamber. So here's the way the town of Harrisburg in their resolution has said it opposing this same bill. They say it removes local authorities from applying development conditions even when developers agree to them. Well, why did the developers agree to them? Because they knew dang well they couldn't get approved without doing it. Mm-hmm. And so it added to their cost. And what do they do to their added cost, Andy?
Pass it right
add
along.
it to whoever buys and builds the houses, which ultimately gets added to the consumer. And so there are a lot of those kind of regulations that are in the bill. They can't put mandatory waiting periods on landowners to refile another rezoning petition. They can file another one quicker. In Shelby, I think right now it's a year. Once you get one denied, the same type of one can't come back for generally a year. So there's a lot of controversy about it. Andy, this is kind of your bailiwick, but Wes, we'll let you go first. You hadn't started one.
Well, I'll keep it short and sweet. First problem's regulation. Second problem's tariffs. Final word is NIMBY, not in my backyard. We've seen dozens and dozens of new constructions built in and around Shelby in the past few years. Houses that start around $250,000 and go up from there. I'm not sure those are affordable starter homes. A friend of mine calls them 10-year homes with 40-year mortgages. Where's that going to leave us in 20 or 30 or 40 years?
Well, Andy, you've had to deal with this, as have I, on the real estate side of it. And of course, I dealt with it in local government for 12 years and had to see both sides. I will tell you that the UDO is even more complicated locally than it was in the years I served. It's been modified and modified. And do you know what? They don't modify it by simplifying it.
No, they do not. Well, you know, we're about to run out of time, but to be honest, everything that they want to do complicates it so much. Builders are cutting corners right now as much as they can, and that is not going to produce a good product that is going to last and build value, unfortunately. I mean, we can look at, you can look at what's being built in this county right now. A lot of it is I'm not particularly proud of, Mike, and it's not going to have a lot of, it's just not going to add a lot of value to our county in 10 to 15 years.
Well, Betsy, it's back to the old question, how much regulation is too much regulation? Go ahead.
I think too much is if it keeps the price up. I know they talk now about how first responders, like my son's a teacher, and my daughter, and my daughter-in-law's a nurse, how they can't afford houses now, and how used to that in 1981 the median age for buying a house was 31, and now it's 61.
That's right.
And the housing problem has got to be fixed, and you just got to bite the bullet and do it.
It is a problem. I am for parts of this bill. Some of it I think is a little heavy-handed on local governments. I have mixed emotions, but there does need to be some modification, I think. All right, let's go to the lightning round. Andy?
Well, Mike, for the first time in the 116-year history of NAACP, they have not invited a sitting president to their annual meeting. They just didn't feel like the president was very interested in what they had to say. So they did not invite President Trump to their meeting this year.
Interesting. Wes?
Well, it seems that Dr. Barrick of University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill has received over $200 million since 1986 for the study of SARS-CoV-2, working directly with the lab at the Wuhan Institute of Biology. If COVID didn't originate in Wuhan, it very well may have started in Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
I read that.
West. Anyway, moving on. Mine is a happy one. Chimney Rock State Park opened June the 27th after the ravageness of Helene, and that's wonderful. Everybody needs to go to the western part of the state and spend some tourist dollars.
All right, well, I'm just going to briefly mention that filing for municipal offices opens on July the 7th. That would be all of the municipalities in Cleveland County and the Water District. One of the great indictments of our American voters here and elsewhere is that so few people, A, run for local municipal office, and B, so few vote in municipal elections. It is your responsibility to vote. It's your privilege to run. And the only way you get good government and better government is more participation by both those who wish to serve and those who analyze positions and vote. So take seriously the upcoming filing for municipal elections and the votes in November. We'll join you again next week for Political Smackdown.